Welcome to our first episode of Into the Clashiverse. This is going to be our pilot episode. What's this podcast is all about. It's me, your host, Drac, here with my kiddo, Wolfblade, also known as Wolfie or Wolf. And we're both from a clan inside the Clash Files family, or the CFF, known as the Rated, where I'm a co-leader. And Wolfie is a longtime member and one of our best attackers. So, what's this podcast about is just to let you know a little bit about myself, is I have a background in software engineering and engineering management, and really want to bring my perspective of what's it like to build software and also be a huge fan of Clash. And, here, and, also one of the things that we love is, being a parent and kiddo and doing this is part of our hobby, and it's passionate, and we have great banter going back and forth, and love to share that with the Clash universe, and hence that's where kind of the episode names come from. It's into the Clashiverse from our perspective. And what's your background, Wolf?
My background is in a lot of performing in the arts, and then a lot of gaming. I'm more of a user of all the tech rather than the developer, so I bring some of that more of that end user perspective versus engineering perspective. You're kind of like the wheelhouse for the Clash of people who pick it up and use the game, right? Yeah.
So my background in terms of the game, I started this back in May 2015. I currently have
old.
I am so old. Currently, I have a Town Hall 17, a Town Hall 16, and a couple smaller accounts here or there. What about you?
I have currently a Town Hall 17 and a Town Hall 10 that is super rushed and does not exist in mine.
The account that shall not be named. All right. So, part of this is, we love the creator community, and we want to also just give back to the game we love, and, just provide different unique perspectives as much as we can in terms of what's going on in the world.
Absolutely.
All right. So since this is a pilot episode, I think it's kind of fitting that we start this into like the new era of, having the Town Hall 17 being out. It's a change in how we're doing heroes. So, there's been a lot of stuff going on. So here we are sitting a week into it. What are your thoughts on Town Hall 17?
Currently, I am a huge fan of wrecking bases with Hydra, and I'm yet to explore the thrower, but I'm about to upgrade it, and I'm going to go dive into some super cool attacks, maybe with like Warden Walk into throwers, or even doing like thrower bombs into the core.
So what were you doing at Town Hall 16 beforehand? Did you swap up your strategy when the release came out?
Yeah. As soon as I saw that the dragons and dragon riders were getting a buff, and there weren't really too many new things that could counter air other than like air defenses getting an upgrade, but there were no health points on that. So Giant Arrow still sweeps those. And with no new additions to air sweepers, it's just drop a Giant Arrow, then Clone Bomb in the center, because the Town Hall Bomb is gone.
So that really nerfed the Town Hall effectiveness, especially for Hydra.
Absolutely, because you can drop one, maybe two freezes if you're unlucky with traps on the Town Hall, and it doesn't even get a single shot off on the blimp, and there's no residue effect since there's no shots, and I can nuke half a base, including most of the core, with just spells in the CC.
So what I hear is you're wrecking with Hydra.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so for me, just because of my personal amount of time, I haven't switched over to Hydra or anything else. So I'm still doing my RC Spirit Walk into Root Riders and Valks with healers, and generally I'm still, I'm sitting up in Legends, and I'm, tripling 5 out of 8 of my hits still against 17s. So I think it's still pretty effective, but I just haven't started diving into it. I started playing with the throwers a little bit. That looks fun. It's still a very skilled attack. It's not like the one finger deploy like the Root Riders were when they came out.
Or the cookie troops that we're about to see, hopefully, again.
Yeah, here we are. First of December, we're going to get the cookies. But as part of Town Hall 17, there was a new hero. What do you think of the minion brands?
I love Mary Poppins. Yeah. I don't know if we're going to explain that later.
No, I think we should do that now. Like, when Minion Prince, when I saw it, and he's a flying troop, all I could think was from Guardians of the Galaxy, the scene where Yondu's floating down and he goes, "I'm Mary Poppins, y'all." You got this blue skin character. Yeah, that's where I go.
Yeah. I think they need to make a Mary Poppins skin for that character. It's going to be very niche and almost no one would get it, but I really am just holding out hope for it.
Yeah, there's all sorts of... I think like an MCU crossover would be fantastic between Clash.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in terms of like the actual play, me personally, I'm just sitting it on upgrade. It'll going from 70 to 90. It'll just be in perma upgrade probably before I touch it. But you've been playing with the Dark Orb and the Minion Puppet. How does that work for you?
Yeah, so especially with air attacks, because that's all that you can really use the Minion Prince for since it's permanently stuck on air. I'm finding that dropping Dark Orb immediately, almost with the Warden ability as the blimp is going in, can increase the value that I'm getting with my clone blimps. Since all the defenses that are hitting the balloons, as soon as the main, like, boom of the clone bomb is done, the balloons just stay alive forever. And I've had balloons from the clone bomb last until the end of the raid, just because the Dark Orb just nukes. I currently have it level 17, but as soon as the 5-day hero boost wore off, it's now sitting at perma upgrade again.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, so what other things have you noticed about Town Hall 17 that you liked or didn't like? Like, for me personally, I liked some of the new changes, like the Fire Spitter, where I know it's kind of like angled that it has its own range of fire that it's able to cover, and I'm noticing like if it's placed well, it can take out like entire sides of the base. So previously you could set like a queen charge or a couple witches to try and clean up one side of the base, where this new Fire Spitter, it really can take out those sort of strategies. So you have to at least be thoughtful of it, but I don't find it to be a dominant defense like the Monolith release was.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have experimented a little bit with queen charges, and those, no, you just can't do a queen charge against the Fire Spitter anymore without investing a ton of freezes or invisibilities. I do find that I think there should be a third Fire Spitter. That's currently where I'm sitting, because especially with Hydra, you come in on one side of the base, and the only thing I look at is what is the opposite direction of the Town Hall and Fire Spitters. And as soon as you find one or two, both of those things, then you just ignore them pretty much.
Yeah, I think as base building catches up, we're going to see a lot more people looking for that, and that winds up like being a lure or a trap for
absolutely
stuff getting pulled in. So I think really I think it's going to take a couple months even as people actually get the full upgrades, because we're still early. Very few people are dropping all the defenses and upgrading, and especially if it doesn't seem as compelling, they're probably not going to invest a ton of books into it.
Yeah. I have found that a lot of people, especially in the rated, have been kind of neglecting the Fire Spitters. And I understand why, because they kind of weak in my opinion.
Well,
I do.
And they also take 2 weeks to upgrade. So plenty of people have started, but they're not investing the books or hammers like you would in terms of other things. And with the new Hero Hall that they added, a lot of people were now having to upgrade the Hero Hall immediately in order to upgrade their heroes.
I personally am not a fan of the Hero Hall edition. I think there should have been like an off the side kind of experience. But I do understand trying to replace some of the hit points that you lost with the Eagle. And with that, you also get the new like building that has a place for everything to be in one. But personally, I'm not a fan of the UI, especially on like iPad. The UI has been a little bit rough to navigate.
Okay, so what are your thoughts on the new Apprentice building? I'm happy that I get the face off the Town Hall away.
I am so happy about that. However, as someone who is currently not in Legends and is using Sneaky Goblins to farm, since I am a Sneaky Goblin scum, as my dad likes to call it, and my goal is to finish all my walls before going into Legends, because I was just so far behind.
How many walls do you have left?
I started the ending of Hammer Jam, like 2 days before it was over, I had 243 walls. Currently, I'm sitting at 41 walls to go to Town Hall 16 level.
Yeah. So you're putting in the work.
I've definitely put in work.
With this massive release, there comes, every new Town Hall and every major release, there seems to be issues. So as part of this, we're going to have a segment of our every episode that we're calling Under the Hood. And this is where we go into, talking about the software engineering world. And this is where Wolfie gets to interview me.
Haha, my turn. All right, so the first question that a lot of people, and I think we got this as a recommended question too.
Lots of people want to know about this topic.
Is why are there so many what we're calling perceived bugs that you can visibly see in the game, like the training potion not working with the heroes, which I'm personally a little mad about, the crashing, the town hall not being able to upgrade with a hammer, the out of sync with some wars. I know some people didn't get to experience that, but especially for the wars that were over the update that had that extended range, it was, if you hit a hero, because there wasn't the hero altar anymore, it probably caused like a desync and it completely wiped our war. Yeah. So
yeah, and so let's start with the first one, the out of sync.
Yeah.
And that goes to the change to the hero altars, going from a 3x3 tile that was specific to that hero to now generic 2x2 little flags that you get to assign your heroes. And it no longer is a destroyable piece of on the map. And so it doesn't. So once you started interacting with what used to be a piece that needed to be destroyed, it then it did not know how to then communicate that with the server of the percentage then was now off that it was perceiving, is my guess. And so because of the percentage of the destruction was off, and during the sync it just threw an error nope, your game state's bad and you're done.
Yeah, I remember I had a 98% 2-star, and then I look back on the map and it is a 3-star, and I'm just like, what the heck?
Well, there was actually a separate bug, which was actually the percentage destruction. Even, and that's still going on right now. That might be fixed as one of these updates, but, one of our clanmates, King Redbeard, had a, 98% 2-star in the game, but if you actually look at the replay, it was a triple. And so there's actually, he was successful in getting the attack through, and this was post the updates, but there's still some syncing errors going on where it's not communicating the game state correctly. And just in the sheer number of wars and war hits that are happening, they're hitting what we call in the industry edge cases of certain things happening. And so that's what's going on. There's also still bad state being reported between the two that's inconsistent.
So I'm going to circle back to what you meant by genericizing the hero altars, because a lot of people probably don't know what that means.
Right. And so in the world of software engineering, we as software engineers, our goal is to make software that's reusable, because we don't want to have special cases for everything, because that makes our lives as engineers more difficult, because it's harder to test, there's more things you have to test. But one of the things that the Hero Hall introduced, that I know you may not like the actual interface, but I do like the fact that they are centralizing it to where it's not just the 4 heroes, but you're able to add the 5th hero, and likely they're going to do 6th, 7th, down the line. And they're building up a system to where it can be adding more and more heroes without having to special case it and do the special tests. And so probably one of the reasons why we lost the defensive warden is this shift to having these 2x2 little stands, is the defensive warden turning into a statue was very special case for that one hero. And then being able to make it generic, and that way each of these stands can be any hero, they probably removed that special defensive shift.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to circle back to another thing you said, which was testing. So why is it so hard for them to find all of these edge case scenarios and all of these bugs that are happening? And I want to focus in on the training potion bug, because that's a huge bug with the heroes, and I'm surprised they did not figure that one out before launch.
For folks who use training potions, they use it to have 1 hour of extended, time where it speeds up your troop and spell and heroes by 4x for an hour. So that way, for those of us who are working during the day, you need to catch up and get all your legends hits in at the end of the day. We rely on that. I'm one of those people that's currently having to do this. And so now I'm hitting this huge pain point that it's boosting everything but the heroes. So now I have to figure out how to plan throughout the day to wait, an hour to get the 2 armies built again, at least.
Seriously. Army training is another topic I need to cover sometime.
Yes, well, definitely a future episode of timing. But for the training potion, I think the way it used to work before the update was each of these areas had a way to take 30 gems to be able to boost it. And so I think all the training potion did was call these areas in the code that handled the boost, and instead of spending gems, it was this magic item. So it just iterated over all these areas, be it for the troop training to each of the individual altars. And so I think when they went to do the designing, I think there was a big miss in both product management and from the software architecture, and those are the people who actually go and design, what does the code look like in terms of a big scale. I think there was a big miss that they didn't cover, how are we going to actually boost these heroes? Because it was no longer based on the altar, it was based now on this hero hall. And so I think there was just a big gap that they missed it. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's not going to be a simple fix, because each of those altars had a place to hold, how long was the timer? You have to have state that you're saving along the way to understand, how long is the boost lasting?
Yeah, because you trigger it at different times, so all of these heroes have their boost run out at different times. It's not just one timer for the whole thing.
That's correct, because before, if you use the gems, it would be individually based on how fast you could go through and click on those 30 gems to boost those heroes. Or, hint, hint, you could do 1 gem hero boost sort of thing to bring this back, Supercell. But, they no longer have that on an individual altar to be able to go do that. And so I think there was just a gap in the product design as well as the software design to bring that back. What surprises me is that this was missed in testing, and especially testing by the developers themselves, because as a developer, as I'm going and coding stuff up, I'm going to be testing my own code before I check it in and get it into the production line, and even before sending it to the testers. And so I'm kind of worried that there's not some serious Clash players in the development team, because that's a big miss.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like that was also a miss partly on the developer build, and I'm curious if it didn't get launched to the developer build in time.
Well, yeah, we'd have to ask our friends in the in the community. But if for them, probably a developer build, they don't need these sort of things to train up armies faster. Yeah. That could actually be something that's turned off. And so that would actually be a good question for our friends in the creator community is, do you ever use these things in terms of the training boost? Because there you don't have that whole Clash world. And this is, again, one of the reasons why it's the only way to test some of these things is to actually get it in production, because you don't have the vast series of, I need to go grind a bunch of loot in the developer test environment.
Yeah, who wants to grind in the developer build where you can just...
Well, you also don't have the hundreds of thousands of bases that you can then go and test against. So one of these things why these releases seem so buggy at times is because the only times you can test at scale is when you're actually putting it in production at scale.
Absolutely.
And so back to the training potion is one of the things that you're going to have to think of is they didn't think about this the whole time. They have to go back almost to the drawing board and think about, okay, in the hero hall, how do we maintain the state? How do we show the hero hall is under boost? You have to do new art and other things that is going to go along with it.
That little green circle that goes underneath the other buildings, yeah.
And what does that mean for... do you show it on the little flags for there? Do you show it on the hero hall? There's various things. And even if that's an easy decision, you still have to go make that sort of art.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of people don't understand is, to a certain degree, there's a lot more work that goes on behind the screens. And especially watching my dad do work literally for websites and going and building applications, is I'll be like, oh, can you just make a button to do this? And he goes, well, that's going to take me probably an hour to do that. And I'm like, no, but it just does this. And it's that disconnect between how you perceive and how you think versus how the machine interprets it.
Yeah. And one of the things our brains do really well is to try and simplify things and abstract things away. But for a computer, you have to tell it what to do. And a lot of times doing what is simple winds up actually being really difficult to do well on a digital device. And one of the other things that in terms of building this and testing this is what we think is simple. There's a lot of complexity that goes on underneath, like equipment. Again, there's just so many different combinations then that makes it really hard to test. And when you're pushing hard to get a release out, you may not have time to go through what we call regression testing, which is to go back through your series of tests every single time for each one of these releases. You just run out of time. And at some point, you have to release just generally what is good enough in order to start setting that aside and start fixing the bugs and getting that out in the public.
Yeah, and I think a good example of what my dad is talking about is the Eternal Tome and the Giant Gauntlet bug. How those two interacted, you wouldn't think to normally test that because you would think, oh, I need to test all the Barbarian King equipment combinations, and then it probably just slipped right by testing to even test it with all the other equipments like the Rage Gem or the Eternal Dome in this example.
Yeah, and it's a very nuanced thing to actually even if somebody did observe it, they may not have realized what was going on.
Yeah.
And it just takes time and people being, acutely aware of what's going on in the environment to go, oh, wait, look at this interaction that we're seeing, and you can take advantage of it.
Absolutely.
So, any other questions for this segment?
I don't think so.
All right. So we have another segment we're going to introduce, and that's our Clash Toolbox.
Absolutely.
So we're going to dive in, and this is where we talk about, there's so many different third-party folks out there that build things for the Clash world. And, one of the things as an engineer is like, hey, I want to highlight these third parties that make our life easier, the game more fun, or just, from whatever it is. It's as simple as like, hey, use Discord in order to communicate because, well, the clan messaging system, but there's other stuff out there.
Absolutely. So this week, I think we're going to highlight a tool called Clash Spot. This is a website that has a ton of different statistics for your clan, for your personal, like how's your account compared to everyone else's? How many clans are in your CWL like ranking, like in Champs 1, 2, 3, etc. And I find I've used this tool before. It also helps me realize, oh, I'm actually doing pretty well for my batting average, for my stars.
Yeah. And, as we're moving into the CWL week, this is where, the clan leaders, we use stats, especially when you're trying to figure out when you have we have a series of various clans that we, have as a bigger family, like the Clash Files. And in the Red Thorn family, we have 3 active clans. And so when you start pushing into champs, you're limited to only 15. And so some of our clans, we are very competitive, and we want to try and find the 15 best players that are going to give us a chance to promote and continue to have success. And so part of this allows me to go as as one of the leaders in the rated is I'm responsible for diving in and looking at the stats and trying to put together a lineup with our other co's to go and figure out who's going to be the best. And this allows us is like looking at the Champs 3 hits rates. We know that we need to find folks who are at least getting, tripling slightly better than half the time in order for us to even just maintain parity within the league. So anyway, check it out. ClashSpot, it's a great website. And we're going to move on now to sort of what we're going to call is, for our question and answer section, is called What the Actual. And as part of this is hopefully somewhere in here, I will go on a tangent that will have you all going, What the Actual? So our first comes from Fuzzy Beaver Nuts. He is the leader of the Rated, one of my dear Clash friends, and It's my job, both in the rated, to not only help run the wars, be the warlords, keep everybody on top of things, but is also as best as possible trying to keep Fuzzy in line, which is really hard to do.
He's like my deranged cousin that I have.
Just one?
Yeah.
So, but question number one, and for folks who are familiar with the CFF, there's a big question, a big debate. Ooh. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
Absolutely not. It's hideous. Same thing with mushrooms. I'll keep my stance. Vegetables don't belong on pizza.
All right. That's a bold stance.
Very.
For me, it's I'm not here to steal anybody's joy. So if you like pineapple...
I'll take people's joy. Absolutely.
I
take it. It's mine.
You're young. I don't want to steal anybody's joy. If you like pineapple on pizza, knock yourself out. Me personally, I cannot stand warm fruit of any kind on pizza, except for olives.
Not even olives.
Olives are a fruit, though. Yeah, they are. Sorry. But
what do you mean olives are a fruit?
They're a fruit.
No.
Yeah, they're a fruit.
No.
Sorry.
That doesn't make sense.
Sorry, I just rocked your world. Oh. We'll just move and go on.
The actual?
Yeah. And so, but the other big debate that's been going on in our little corner of the Clash world is Pepsi versus Coke. And, here, we've been asked to take a stance, and we're going to. And we're going to disappoint all sorts of people, regardless of what we pick.
Absolutely.
So, Wolfie, all right. So, as a tip of the hat to our buddy C-Note, pop the ceremonial
Dr. Pepper.
So, we're good Texas kids here. We are native Texans, and we're going to go with Dr. Pepper, who's actually the number 2 cola producer in the world now.
You know it.
Took over that distinction from Pepsi. So, we're adding our third. It's not just Pepsi versus Coke, but it's Pepsi versus Coke versus Dr. Pepper.
Yeehaw.
Now, personally, I have not had a cola product in 12 years. Fun fact for me, that's really engaging for parties.
I just had one, so I can't do anything.
So I drink fizzy water without any cola products whatsoever. That's my go-to.
Dr. Pepper's just better, though. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, especially Diet Dr. Pepper, that's like a good dessert drink without being
absolutely.
A dessert.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, our question comes from our buddy Congressman Coolrick, who has been so supportive of helping Wolfie and I get the podcast going. I cannot thank him enough.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
So I'll take this one. Is how important are bug reports, especially at new release time? Now, this, I can understand, he runs the Reddit Clash of Clans subreddit, and, him watching all these bug reports is just, if he publishes bug reports, it's just going to help him from dealing with a bunch of duplicates. But from an engineering perspective, just knowing the number of rates and having detailed bug reports of hey, here's a video of it happening, or here's a series of steps that I did to reproduce it, immensely, but there's a lot of times to where knowledge of the bug happens quickly in terms of software engineering, but just getting data and continuously having it there, and also having sites like Reddit where people can be like, is this a bug? So instead of reaching out into customer support at Supercell, because they will be overwhelmed with requests anyway. It's having that other thing where people can go and ask questions and realize they're not alone, or questioning their sanity of whether or not this is a bug or not. Super helpful.
I do think that there should be a system in place for reporting bugs directly to the Supercell developers, but I do think that it should be something similar to Reddit, to where it's based on I know they have the karma system or something, to where you have to build up enough reputation in the community as a quote-unquote bug reporter, to where you can take these things off of Reddit and submit them and then document it, which ones you've done.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go off on something that I know from my experience is Mojang in their development of Minecraft. They have a forum to where you can post bug reports, and the community and the developers can go on there and mark it as resolved. Is this an actual bug? Is this confirmed to be something that can happen? Because you could go and report a false thing. And so I think that Supercell should take notes of that.
Yeah, there's a lot I think we, as a engineering manager, I would ask Supercell to do differently, just from my perspective in both managing relations with the community, their creators, to all sorts of things. And I think there's a question coming up later, is just dealing with the transparency of Supercell. They have been really poor this town hall release.
Absolutely.
And so we'll get to that in a moment. So the next question, I'm going to have Wolfie lead off answering this one, but this comes from the amazingly humble Trample Damage.
Who never overtalks. Never.
No. How has the game affected our personal relationship, both positive and negative, if applicable?
Yeah. I think, personally, we've grown a lot closer over Clash. I remember probably a couple of years ago, I kind of was a little bit secluded, was sticking to myself in school, just trying to get through it. And then we started playing Clash again. I remember it was up in one of our vacations. I was like, hey, I'm going to pick this up again. And I was at Town Hall 12. He was probably, I think, Town Hall 15? 14. Right as
15 was coming out.
No, 16.
Okay.
We quit right before 15 came out. And so it was kind of like a bonding thing, that we could sit together on the couch, put on a show that we don't have too much to pay attention to. Because that is one thing I will say. Is
short attention span theater shows.
Absolutely. Where you don't have to be cognizant of the show, and so you can be playing on Clash. And it's, yeah. But
And I think it's been good in terms of, I know you're moving into, you're in your middle of high school, you're busy. It always gives us something that we can talk about. The day doesn't have to revolve around like, how was your school day? This is like, oh, have you checked out the new update? Or, other things of where...
check out this attack that I just found on YouTube.
Yeah. Because there was like, kind of personally, there was like a big gap. Like when I stopped coaching your teams, because you just outgrew that. And you moved into other things in terms of like band, where I have no concept of what goes on there. There's kind of a disconnect of like, how do we relate and what things can we do together? But it's been good because, this gives us something. Even on long car trips, we can listen to some podcasts or talk about the latest strategies, or listen to how many walls you just upgraded during the car trip, and driving me nuts because look at you, just had 40 walls over the next hour, you sneaky goblin farmer.
He hates it. But soon I'll be going up into Legends and I will be passing him in cups.
Challenge accepted.
I am going to beat you. I already know it.
Well, poor Darth Yoda when he tried to think he could do that to Fuzzy. All right, speaking of our Darth Yoda, he comes to us with a couple questions. So he asked the question of, why is it so difficult for Supercell to be transparent with fixes? So there's a couple layers that we can go here. It's like, one, they're just being a blank wall right now in terms of, yep, that's a bug, and then they stop. And they're not being outwardly communicative. And so really they're making a choice on doing that. Now they could be down resources, or it's hard to communicate. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But in terms of managing the community and expectations, in terms of acknowledging things that are bugs or communicating that there are issues, they're just being atrociously bad. Mm-hmm. Now, for issues that might be like the training motion bug, it's hard to promise of like, oh, it'll be fixed in a week, just because what goes into trying to figure it out is like, well, what's the design? How much do you code it? How do you test it? It's really hard to provide accurate estimates as an engineer and engineering manager. And so a lot of times so probably internally they'll have a date that's a target and they'll try and work towards that. But communicating that externally, you're just setting, like if you try and explicitly communicate dates, you're just setting yourself up for disappointment and community disappointment. But to be telling people that you are working on it, you have goals, and usually they should be better about mitigations, like being able to push out things like, well, let's reduce training time for the next 2 weeks, or some other mechanism to try and mitigate the effects of this while they work on fixes. Because honestly, I would rather them go and, like, for the rest of the month of December, have 75% hero, training time reduced just as part of the game, and then actually work on a solid fix versus just trying to rush a code fix out, because then you could actually, rushing your fixes can actually wind up compounding things even further.
Yeah, I think that's something I figured out in my coding class that I was taking. I was working on this giant project, and I had this bug, and I was like, oh, I'll just fix it by adding a new method that takes care of it, and come down the line, and that new method bombs how I can do this. Like, it made me go back, and I had to rework my entire system, and it was just a nightmare. And I can't imagine how Supercell feels on a large-scale game that probably has millions of lines of code that all need to interact with each other versus a silly high schooler with 10 methods and the whole thing.
So Darth Yoda also asks, why is Cat? And for those who don't know, Cat is the leader of Red Thorn and the Red Thorn group of clans of which the Rated is a part of. He asks, why is Cat so nice, and what can we do to make her a little bit more mean?
Ooh, I think one of the reasons why Cat is so nice is because she's Canadian. And as Texans, there is that bit of online part where the Canadians are a little bit too nice up there.
Well,
and they're plotting something.
They're polite. I don't know about nice, but they're certainly polite.
Ooh.
Now, I think Cat already has the appropriate amount of meanness, because when the Kitty Claws come out, she uses them very effectively. But I don't want to make her any meaner. I think I think she's an amazing person.
Absolutely.
And so our next set of questions actually come from the astoundingly nice Cat. All right, so I'll start reading these, and I'll let you lead, Wolf. All right, what inspired you to start your own podcast?
I think one of the big things is money and wealth. I'm just kidding. I think one of the biggest thing that's inspired us is how we listen to podcasts on road trips. We thought to ourselves, how cool would that be if we could make our own? And we started thinking about doing YouTube, but that just never got together because video, faces, blech. And so I think podcasts, we just saw it and we were like, that community is so cool.
Yeah.
And especially take Sino, Congressman Coolrick, Cat, Trample Damage, all these people that may not have as much influence in terms of the broader community, but inside the podcast community, it's just so cool.
Yeah.
I think we wanted to really bring something to that.
Yeah, for me, it was a way to nerd out about Clash with my kiddo. And I just one day just had the thought of, we could just hit record and publish what we talk about anyway. And then the other one kind of already talked about is getting more of an engineering perspective of what's it like. Because I know a lot of the content creators, it's there's a bug and I don't know what's going on in the code base. And I can actually kind of talk to that. And so that's where I wanted to help do that.
All right. So our second question from the wonderful, astoundingly nice Cat is, how did we come up with our podcast name?
How did we come up with our podcast name? We were just throwing stuff at a wall and hoping one of them would stick. I think we went through 50 different names. But I think ultimately, we were both MCU nerds. That's the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And, I kind of had the thought, across the Clashiverse, thinking, for the
multiverse, yeah.
And then, the multiverse. And eventually we could talk about all sorts of stuff within Clash. And eventually I know Wolfie wants to talk about that dark base over there with the gem mine.
It's the builder base.
Sure, whatever. But really, it's it just had a catchy ring to it, and we bounced some ideas off folks, and we just wound up on. We just finally decided to pick something because one, engineers are bad at naming things, so just never ever let me pick a name, and he did. So that just means he's an engineer at heart too. So
absolutely.
But it was also a good enough name, and since we're going for amassing wealth based on podcasting, a small game, this name was so important. So that's where we went. So what do you want to cover during your episodes?
I think in our episodes, I really want to cover, what we've pretty much done up to this point is what's going on in the game, what are the bugs, what's going on under the hood.
Yeah, I like, we just really want to pour into the community and help answer questions. Answer, provide information, clarity where we can. That's really, kind of my goal.
Yeah.
So, Kat's next question, and I'll let you lead on the first answer here. Do you ever disagree on attack strategies? If so, who wins the argument?
I think the biggest disagreement we ever had was Overgrowth versus bringing Rages in Root Rider Valk spam. Because I won because I got more triples. Where I would bring just 3 Rages or 5 Rages, some Freezes, and just go straight into the core, just nuke it. Whereas my dad always liked to bring his, 3 Overgrowths? 2 Overgrowths?
2.
Usually 2. But now you're bringing 3 in some of your attacks, which, I can't stand the Overgrowth spell.
And really, it's what's effective for you. And it's like, in terms of disagreements, it's when Wolfie needs to make a war hit, if he's the one making the hit, he needs to be comfortable with the army. And so, in the same way, when I love being able to just, hand them the iPad, look at this base, tell them what you think of, and get his feedback. But ultimately, I'm the one, when I do my hits, has to be comfortable with what's going on.
Yeah.
And so that's the quote-unquote winner.
I win. No, I win.
So where are those card keys that you have?
Oh.
Yeah. All right, so Kat asked this question to Wolf. What's your favorite aspect of Clash of Clans, and who is a better attacker, you or your dad?
So obviously, I'm the better attacker, right? Like, there's no questions about that. But I think my favorite...
How many perfect CWL weeks do you have?
Anyways, I think my favorite aspect of Clash of Clans is just the community behind it. Because, especially as someone who's young and doesn't exactly have like that work-life balance, is having this community that I know will pretty much be behind me almost no matter what. It's just so special. And the only other place I find this is in like my band, because I'm very lucky, I know, in that I have a fantastic band to be a part of. But I think that's my favorite aspect, is just the community and all these podcasters, YouTubers, and even just the people in our clan. Yeah. It doesn't have to be anything big.
Yeah, and for me, the favorite aspect for me is definitely our community. It's what's kept me in the game, keeps me coming back to the game, even when horrible things happen, either personally in life. That's where, like, Kat, I'm definitely shout out her, just being there over and over again throughout the years and maintaining stuff, and Fuzzy having our back whenever we need it, or being there to talk each other down from the ledge when we're ready to rage quit from whatever nerf that just happened. Root Riders 3 times, but I'm not bitter. So the next question, this is to me, from Kat, is when you look at the game as a software engineer, what makes you most crazy when you see all the bugs that are happening in game, and what advice would you give Supercell about this? And this is where I would rather see them try and make things more incremental along the way. Now, I know they chose to shift things to more moderate releases and try not to do as big bang. I would encourage that just even more, and also try and be expanding some sort of larger community than just the creator program, to really start getting more iterations of feedback more often, and especially pulling in some of the more talented players in the game to really start pushing at the boundaries of what do troops and defenses need, does it really work.
They should really get my opinion. I'm totally the best candidate for this as a young child.
Absolutely. You have a depth of wisdom that will astound them.
Oh, yeah. So many years.
But really, is one, trying to be more incremental. The other thing that just drives me bonkers is they seem to be spending a lot of energy all over the place. I know they're focusing on the home village, but even there, it's things like doing hard mode. It doesn't seem like they're really finishing it and carrying it across the finish line. They dabble here and there and just grab little bits of improvement every once in a while, versus saying, hey, we really need to make this work and work well, so they can test it and be done with it and set it aside. And so I don't know what the code base is like, but these are the sort of things that drive me bonkers is when features aren't really finished, where it just things just keep piling on them and not really truly finishing it and feeling polished.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to call it here. I'd like to thank the many content creators out there, Cat, Trample Damage, C-Note, Congressman Coolrick, Itsus, and there's just so many others out there. But those are the folks that, they're kind of in our orbit thanks to the CFF. Yeah.
And we would like to encourage you to use a creator code. You can use anyone. We don't have one yet, but we use code Trample.
Yeah, use code Trample.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But, just because we use code Trample doesn't mean you all have to pick your favorite creator, but pick someone when you go to get things either out of the online store at Supercell or in the in-game purchases. And I'd also like to thank the many leaders, both current and in the past, of the CFF families. That's how I even found this, was like some of the podcasts, like Hal and other folks did.
Way back in the olden days.
Yeah, back when I killed dinosaurs for our clothes, right?
Yep.
And so, we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for both past and current leaders all over the CFF. And speaking of the CFF, if you want to find us, please check out the CFS Discord. More specifically, we hang out in the Red Thorn server. Come join us, ask questions of us there. Love to have like Q&A and any sort of feedback.
Yeah. And you can probably find us on YouTube, Instagram, probably coming up pretty soon. We might make one of those. But
yeah, I think you're wanting to do some like short videos or content.
Maybe get some stuff on there. All right.
Yeah. And so next episode, I think one of the things you and I talked about is like, let's talk about like the economies in the Clash world. Like with this Town Hall 17 release, we saw like massive packs with, with large dollar values attached to them. And there's our favorite thing to talk about in the economy inside the game. Or. So
much shiny.
Come join us for the next episode for that. Feel free to send us any questions that are specific around that. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.